earlier today, I was just thinking about, as I was looking back over the last few weeks and realizing that, there's some weeks that there may be as many as 35 or so people that view a study, and then the next week maybe there'll be 12 or 9 or sometimes, and I was noticing, and sometimes then they'll pick up after. But the Lord made it real clear to me not to be concerned about that at all. So what we're doing here is not for the purpose of entertaining. It's not meant to be, and you know that. You're on here, you're studying, you're desirous of knowing what's going to be going on, what's the Lord revealing, and so what is going on. And you have to just realize that there are a lot of people that are not interested in prophecy. They're interested in making a living, they're interested in entertainment, they're interested in a lot of things, and there's even a lot of people, and they're good Christian folk, but they are not that interested in that. Someone's mic is still on, it sounds like. Now, as I was going through and thinking about the next few weeks, I know that many times we look at Zechariah chapter 12, 13, and 14, and that is very important, but it seemed like that the Lord told me to go back and pick it up farther back than that and see what leads into it, because a lot of times if you're just reading through Zechariah, you don't realize what is all that about whenever you get into the 10th, 11th, 12th chapter as you're working toward it. And what got my attention, or got me thinking about it today, was this morning early, I had yesterday stopped on this verse, Zechariah chapter 14, verse 4, and that day his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, which is in front of Jerusalem on the east, and the Mount of Olives will be split in its middle from the east to the west by a very large valley, so that half of the mountain will be toward the north and the other half toward the south. We've looked at that many times, and I've thought about, we know that Christ is coming back. We know that this same Jesus that you've seen go into heaven, the disciples were told by the angels, that he will come in like manner as you've seen him go. And so we've expected that, again, his feet are going to stand on the Mount of Olives. This now, of course, predated his ascension into heaven by a long while, but this is a prediction or a prophecy of that. But we look back expecting that this would be fulfilled literally on that day that Jesus was speaking of in our past, but also speaking about in our future. And so we're looking forward to that day. But I want us to see the things that lead up to that. And so that's what we're going to start with in this next while. And we're going to start with actually chapter 10 and verse 1 of chapter 10. Now, and this is talking about the restoration of Judah and Israel. So you'll remember that the children of Israel divided in the north and southern kingdoms under Jeroboam to the north, Rehoboam to the south, that they divided. And 10 of the tribes went with Jeroboam to the north, and they were called Israel. And Judah, Benjamin, and especially, and maybe some of Manasseh, went with to the south of Jerusalem, and that is Judah. And originally was Judea, and then that is Judah. That was the nation of Judah. And they, Israel, at a certain time, they were fighting or in danger of being taken over, and Sennacherib did not defeat them. That God delivered them in the time of Sennacherib, but following him was Tiglath-Pileser, who did destroy Israel and sent the children of Israel, the 10 tribes, sent them north across the Caucasus Mountains, across into what would today be probably Ukraine, and all across there, and then from there they spread so that different groups were spread from there to the west. And so most people believe that, or the ones that have studied those things, believe that the tribes, like the tribe of Dan became the Danish, and the rivers they crossed, like the Danube, picked up. The tribe of Dan were apt to name things after Dan, and so that's why they're maybe easier. But others believe they know which nations were made of the children of Israel, those 10 tribes that went. And those, and I'm not so positive about this, but I was looking again today. Now, I told you maybe a week ago or two that when it talks about Ephraim, that Ephraim probably referred to the United States, the covenant people. However, others that have studied that believe that Ephraim probably became the British, and that the Manasseh is probably the one that became the Caucasians in the Americas. So I'm not sure about all of that at all. I still kind of think that Ephraim should represent probably not only Britain, the covenant people. British means covenant man, and so and the sign of Ephraim was the cross, because of the crossed arms of Israel of Jacob when he blessed the children of Joseph, and so that he put his right hand on Ephraim and his left hand on Manasseh, and crossed his hands because of where that Joseph had put them there. Now, and we've talked about that some. I won't do a lot more talking about that. But here, when it talks about the restoration of Judah and Israel, it's talking about the southern, those that were the Jews under and Judea, basically, the Jews, those that were in that group, and then Israel is talking about Ephraim and the northern tribes. And so, so generally here, though, when it divides them like this, just think of it, many times it'll say Judah and Israel, or it'll say Judah and Joseph, or it'll say Judah and Ephraim. All of those, I think, mean the same thing. So Israel, Joseph, and Ephraim, the northern nation, were many times called by those three names. And so when it's talking about their restoration, then realize that this is talking about in the last days. Some of this has already begun. And so Judah has already begun to enter into the land, and others that, like with Judah, there's a lot of the tribe of Levi that did not have an inheritance in the land, and a lot of Levi is scattered in among the Jews, among the nation of Judah, but also among all the other tribes as well. And so you'll find that. And but anyway, so we're going to read tonight then about the restoration of Judah and of Israel, or Ephraim, or Joseph, as the case may be. Now in verse 1 he says, "Ask rain from the Lord at the time of the spring rain, the Lord who makes the storm clouds, and he will give them showers of rain, vegetation in the fields to each man." So, but the main things I want us to see here, it says, ask the Lord, and then the Lord who makes the storm clouds, he will give them the showers of rain. Now, many people today are seeking their blessing or their benefit or whatever it may be from very many sources. We're going to read about some of those as part of what the gods that are failing people today. And but when it comes to the weather, to the rain, and to all of that, we need to remember that it's the Lord who makes the storm clouds. It's the Lord who makes the clouds. It's the Lord who gives the showers of rain, and he's the one that should be asked. And so he says in verse 2, for the teraphim speak iniquity, and the diviners see lying visions and tell false dreams. Now here's the thing. The teraphim were household gods. You remember, I believe it was Rebecca that stole her father's household gods when they came back into the land. The household gods were generally carved of wood for poor people, maybe even made out of stone. Smaller gods that could sit actually in the household. Maybe you have a shrine for them, and so or they would maybe be made of stone, maybe be made of precious metals, maybe coated, plated in silver or gold or other things. Teraphim are the household gods that are made of the things of the earth, and it says they speak iniquity. They do not have the interest of God the Father. The things that are the gods that people worship. Now, today, what would the household gods be? And I had to do some thinking about that. Who is it in our home that gets the attention, almost to the point of worship? And I'm afraid many times it's our television sets and our computers and our electronics, our screens, I guess you could say. And they speak iniquity, whether it's our cell phone, our computer, our television. They speak iniquity. Iniquity, sin, sinfulness comes through it. So I'm not, I know like many of my forefathers who've preached against all of these things, maybe I don't do that very much, but we do have to realize that what we give a lot of value to, what do people think about it on Facebook? What do people think about it on the computer, on the programs we're watching, or on the television, on the news, and all of that? And realize that they are speaking not only falsehood, but they're speaking that which is sinful in the sight of God. And they have a tendency to corrupt the heart, the mind, the soul of those. And then it says the diviners see lying vision. Diviners are fortune tellers. They are the people who see the future, and they see all sorts of things in the future, and they're telling. I'll tell you now that all of these, they don't know any more than you do. They can guess, they can make good guesses, bad guesses, whatever, but they see lying visions. They see things that the way they want them to be is what they see. And so lying visions, they tell false dreams. And even, I'm afraid even among sometimes, I've heard of Christian people that it seemed to me like, they say, I had a dream, and this is what God told me in a dream. And I noticed that I've still got books probably out in the shop that I saw one today. And I thought, I ought to go back now and take that book after all of these years and look at it and see if those visions and all those dreams and all that, did they come to pass? Are those anything near like the way things have happened since then? So if the household gods speak iniquity and the fortune tellers are telling lying visions and telling of false dreams, then their comfort is vain. They cannot guide you. They can't tell you what you really need to know. And what they tell you that may make you feel good, nevertheless, it's not what you need to know. It's not what you need. Because if you're comforted, if you've got a disease, if you've got heart disease, if you've got any other disease, you're better off not having a doctor that will try to say, oh yeah, it's all going to be okay. Everything's great. Everything's good. Just relax. Everything's going to be okay. And they try to give you comfort. And it's like, it's baby talk, but they know that they don't know that how it's going to come out. And so it is worthless to you. You need to know the truth. And I can tell you now that I think a reason a lot of people don't care or want to know about prophecy is because it's not comforting to them if they see that the Lord's calling into question the nations, calling into question the United States of America, or calling into question the nation of Israel, or calling into question whatever country it may be, or whatever it may be, or whatever denomination it may be, or whatever people it may be. And so they comfort in vain, and because of that, The people wander like sheep without a shepherd. They have no idea what's going on. They're not being guided in the proper way to the proper food and shelter and water and all of that stuff that they needed. They are just wandering. People wander like sheep. And I don't know if you know how sheep are. I imagine you do, but they have a tendency, if you just leave them out on a hillside to pasture, they have a tendency to wander off. And so the shepherd has to kind of keep them pulled together. And sometimes it's almost easier to walk with them, keep them moving so that they move together, because otherwise they have a tendency to wander off. And that's what's going on today. People are wandering. And I don't say wondering, I say wandering. In other words, they're getting lost. And a lot of people are truly getting lost and getting caught in dangerous places, on rocky crags, and falling into pits, and falling in under wild animals and beasts or whatever, like sheep, because they were not protected. The shepherds did not watch over them and take care of them and tell them the truth about what was going on. Why? Because they were feeding themselves. They were taking care of themselves. And so it says they're afflicted because there is no shepherd. The ones that should be their shepherds are hirelings. And I'm thinking about all of this political stuff that's going on right now, and all the things that are happening, and how many people are only, it seemed to be, mostly interested in themselves, in what is good for me and my family and my group and all of that, but not a true shepherd that takes care of the wandering, that binds up the wounds, that brings about protection, that helps them to find the right places so that they will have everything that they need. They're afflicted because there is no shepherd. And so just like sheep that are left out on a hillside, you come and there's no shepherd, that's what the Lord finds. And he finds his sheep wandering because the shepherds are not watching over them, not caring about them. And God, when he sees that, you need to understand there's some things that make God angry. And, you don't have to be, who was it, Jonathan Edwards, that preached sinners in the hands of an angry God and helped bring about a great awakening, or maybe a second great awakening. I don't remember exactly. But God says, my anger is kindled against the shepherds that are not doing the job. Shepherds generally are the people that are actually in charge. And you think of shepherds, in our sense, we think of shepherds as those who should be guiding people in the ways of the Lord, to know what is God's will, what is God doing, what is God's will, and how do you behave yourself in a way that is pleasing to God. So you feed on the green pastures. So when you hear their preaching, you feed on that which is sustenance, that which will bring about strength and healing and encouraging and all of that stuff, and you drink deep of the water, the holy water of God. The shepherds are the ones who have that job. And then he said, I will punish the male goats. Male goats, I think, I'll just tell you what I think, is that it's talking here about lay leadership, that the male goats were those like the Levites. So you had the story of the Good Samaritan, you had the priest that went by on the other side, and the Levite went by and did exactly the same thing the priest did. The priest was actually the ministering persons, but the Levite, they're the religious leaders, not priests, but they are the religious leaders. The male goats are the ones that would guide the sheep in the places where they were to go. The goats were the ones, they had the ability to know where to go, and sometimes they were Judas goats that would guide them into the place of slaughter. Sometimes they'd guide them into the place of shearing. Sometimes they got them into water, or they'd guide them into good grazing, whatever it is. But God says, my anger's kindled against the shepherds, and he said, I will punish the male goats. For the Lord of hosts has visited his flock, the house of Judah. So first of all, he's going to talk about Judah, and then he'll talk about Ephraim. So the Lord of hosts has visited his flock, the house of Judah. I believe that that is true. I believe that's where we're to today. So God today is visiting his flock, the house of Judah. And what is he finding? He's finding a very secular people whom he is going to bring to himself through the trial, through what is coming. Now there's some terrible, terrible things that are going to take place in the days soon to come, the days between now and the coming of the Lord. There's going to be some terrible, terrible days that are going to go on, not only for Christians, but also for the Jews first. It's for the Jews first, and then also for the Christians, for the Gentiles, who it will also fall upon the children of the adopted children of Israel in that day, and those who have become the children of Abraham by adoption, whether or not they are direct descendants. And I'm not sure, but what a lot of people do not even realize, but if they could only know, they are descendants of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the children of Israel, and they just don't know that they are. That's the way I think most of us are. But the Lord has visited his flock, first of all, the house of Judah. The house of Judah is back in the land, and the nation of Israel, that's called it's the United Nation of Israel, is not only Judah, that southern part that was attacked on October the 7th, and that is fighting back, but they're also fighting in the north, in Israel itself. Israel, that northern part, is still the Jews. The Jews are now there, and so far the other tribes have not so much come into that land, and part of that may be because the persecution hasn't begun yet to the degree that it will. But soon there will be an attack out of the north, and the same way that there's been one out of the south, and all of that's going on, more and more Lebanon is going to be burned off and punished because of what happens. We'll see that in these verses that will be soon to come. But the Lord of hosts visited his flock, the house of Judah. He's come to see them. And what does he see? He's seeing a secular people that need to come to know the Lord, that need to come to know Christ. And so that's what he's seeing. And so he said the Lord of hosts has visited his flock, the house of Judah, and will make them like his majestic horse in battle. They are going to do the fighting that God has intended for them to do, that God will be the one. And so they are his majestic horse. That means they are the force of war that will go forward, and God will work through all of them. And so because of that, he says, from them will come the cornerstone. Now, the last few weeks we've been studying about the cornerstone, and Jesus said that he was the cornerstone, the stone that the builders rejected, that has become the chief stone on which the temple is built, the whole house of God is built, and all that goes along with that. Two passages in the New Testament we looked at, two passages in the Old Testament that refer to the cornerstone. From them will come the cornerstone. From Judah will come the cornerstone. And so Jesus came from Judah, from the tribe of Judah, and he is the cornerstone. This is a messianic prophecy from way back then. From them will come the tent peg, that which everything hangs on. And so in every place that you go, dearly, the laws of Moses, the Ten Commandments, are the basis, whether it be British common law, or whether it be the Constitution and all of the laws in the United States, or whether it be other nations. They have the basic tenets are the same. The tent peg, that which everything hangs on. And from them the bow of battle. They are the one who has led forth the military. Anyway, so the the cornerstone, the tent peg, the bow of battle. From them, every ruler, all of them together. At one time, I was studying because I had come to the thought or idea that maybe what was Prince Charles at that time and now King Charles might be the Antichrist, the one that would be coming. And I know that's a terrible thing to say and all of that, but I was evaluating the all various things about his life and all of that. But one of the things I found out in doing all of that was that Queen Elizabeth was from the tribe of Judah, and so was almost every European monarch where they still had kings, or even in the ones where they didn't have that. So say like in those days is Juan Carlos and the other European nations north of there. They could trace their lineage back to King David, all of them. And so all of them were kin to each other. So like when, in those days, when a king had a daughter that was to be married, he wanted to marry her into someone of the same tribe. So all of them, the royal families, were kin to each other and intermarried with each other. Even though they were from various nations, they intermarried each other so that they carried forward this bloodline. And I think that went on all the way at least through Prince Charles. I know through Queen Elizabeth because I studied it that far. And I was really surprised at how many of those. And if you go back to realize what her lineage was and all of that, it was just real interesting to me. But every ruler, all of them, the kings come, the rulers come from the children of Israel and from Judah, especially from Judah. And so many of them are Jewish, whether they know it or not, but I think most of them do. But he says about them, they will be as mighty men, treading down the enemy in the mire of the streets of battle. And that's what's going on right now. You see that the United States and Israel have been hard allies since the time Israel became a state. The United States was the first one to recognize Israel, the one to recognize Jerusalem. They have been allies. They're our closest ally. We've said that many times. And that we have an ironclad relationship with the nation of Israel. Now, I know that the president right now has turned his back on some of the things that he had said. But they are mighty men. And it's a good possibility, and in fact, I believe the probability is overwhelming that no matter who attacks them, that they will come through victorious. In fact, I'm as confident of that, more confident that they will come through victorious than that the United States would. But the trouble of it is, it's just like when President Biden said the other day that he was going to withhold certain types of weapons unless he got certain assurances and made sure certain things happen, all of that. And Benjamin Netanyahu said, we can and will stand alone. What he said was true and right except for one thing. He should have said, by the help of God, we will stand alone without man's help. Had he said that, that would have been the right thing to say. Because if Israel stands, as it is today, it will be because God delivers them. But they are mighty warriors, and they do. I understand the destruction is rough under them, but they have been told. They know what's got to happen. They also know what happened to them in October 7th, and they are repaying what they are repaying. And I know that this will not get good reviews, and maybe it'll get kicked off. I don't know. But anyway, they will be as mighty men, treading down the enemy in the mire of the streets of battle. That's exactly what is going on today. Don't get in their way. let God deal with his people, God is going to bring them to salvation. God, and by salvation I mean Jesus Christ, which is the word salvation. He will bring them to Jesus Christ, and they will know him, the one who died for them. They're going to know that. That's what this series of chapters and lessons is going to be about. That's where it goes. And it talks about when he will reveal him in both chapter 12 and chapter 13 and 14. But he said, treading them down, the enemy in the mire as in the streets of battle, they will fight, and the Lord will be with them. And so you can see that happened in the 67 War, the Yom Kippur War, the War of Independence, all of those different wars. You've seen that the Lord has fought for them. And sometimes they didn't see the Lord. They didn't recognize the Lord, but their enemies did. And I can remember reading about how that one soldier took in whole units of the Egyptian army and all of that. And they said, why, with all your weapons, did you surrender to one man with just a single weapon? And they said, did you not see those people behind that great army, that massive army behind them? They said they saw it, but the Jews did not see that. They saw that they were standing almost alone at that time, but the Lord was with them, and the Lord will be with them. By the way, the word will be is not in the original language. It says, for the Lord with them. So they will fight, the Lord with them. And so when they fight, the Lord fights with them. The riders on horses will be put to shame. I believe now, I'll just tell you now that I believe that may be talking about the United States, Russia, Turkey, and Iran, and maybe a few other countries. Riders on horses. You remember the Egyptians rode on horses. The horses came from Egypt. And the riders on horses will be put to shame. Why? Because they will be put to flight in the fight against the children of Israel. Those who have superior weapons, those who have superior men, numbers, all of the various things that they have that would be military might and readiness and all of that, they will be put to shame in the day that come, because God will enable the children of Israel to win in this fight. He said, I will strengthen the house of Judah and will save the house of Joseph. So first of all, he will strengthen the house of Judah, and then he says, and I will save the house of Joseph. Now, a little later, the house of Joseph will be called Ephraim. So Joseph many times is called Ephraim, sometimes it's called Israel, and sometimes it is called Joseph, Ephraim, or Israel. It could be any of those three. Means the same thing. I will save the house of Joseph. The house of Joseph means, though, the house of Joseph is Ephraim and Manasseh. And so if you buy the idea that the United States, that the Caucasians are the house of Joseph, or those that were with them in the 10 tribes, then that came across the Caucasus Mountains, came across, Russia would not, the children of Japheth would not allow them into that land, but they pushed them to the west through Ukraine, and then on into the Scandinavian countries, and on down into maybe to France, although France could also, some of that seems to be maybe the tribe of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, so Japheth, or it could be all the way down, say, even into Spain, into England, and then finally into the Americas, as those nations were crossed on a cross. But he said, I'll strengthen the house of Judah, and I will save the house of Joseph. So God's going to save Judah first, but the house of Joseph. And I will tell you now that I believe the Christians in America, you see right now what's going on with the Jews, the anti-Semitism. You need to understand that we are also from the tribe of Shem. The Caucasians are from the tribe of Shem. And so the Caucasians are also Semites. We're not Jews necessarily. We may or may not be Jews, but we are Semites. We are, and so this is going to not only, the thing of it is, so many of those who are coming against, who are the most anti-Semitic, are also from the tribe of Shem as well, from the children of Shem. But anyway, I won't go any farther with that, except to say this, that what's going on begins with the Jews, but Christians is coming against you soon. Very soon, what you see happening, this anti-Jewish fervor that is building up, is coming against you too. And there's not going to be that much difference between the Jews who were Jewish by birth and those who are of the children of Israel by adoption, because we all will be together in Christ. I'm not saying we're all going to worship on Saturday or Sunday or anything of that sort. What I'm saying is we will recognize each other as brothers, and we will recognize our mutual, that which is mutual among us, and that is that which is Christ, the salvation. He said, I will save, Yasha, I will save the house of Joseph. And so the house of Joseph will be saved, but so will the children of Israel, or of Judah. I will bring them back, he said. Now, I've tried to think about, okay, what if the 10 tribes all came back to Israel? Well, for one thing, not all the 10 tribes would be Christian, for one thing. There's a large group of Christians, but all the Christians in the United States and Britain, I don't think could fit into the Middle East. I just don't think that it could be possible. So he said, I will save them, and I will bring them back. Surely there would be representation or something. I don't know about what all that means. I will bring them back, except that he will bring them back to himself, bring them back together in the sense that they will be one again. Because I have had compassion on them, and they will be as though I had not rejected them. So God has rejected them, and you know that God rejected them. They were sent out of the land, the children of Israel first, and then the children of Judah afterwards. The children of Israel by the Assyrians under Tiglath-Pileser, the Babylonians ejected and took into Babylon the children of Judah, and so you remember all of those stories and you studied them. But he said, it will be as though I had not rejected them, for I am the Lord their God, and I will answer them. He is the Lord. He is the Yahweh, the Jehovah, the God of gods, and he is their God. In other words, he is our God. The Lord is our God. Others may have other gods, but God says, I am the Lord, their God, and I will answer them. So when we pray, when these pray, God says, I will answer them. Now Ephraim will be like a mighty man, and their heart will be glad as if from wine. So he said he would say Judah first, and then I will save the house of Joseph. Here he now calls him Ephraim. Ephraim will be like a mighty man. Today, Ephraim, and I believe it's talking here about the United States. It may be talking about England, but I think it's talking about the United States, will be like a mighty man. In other words, who is the strongest power in the entire world, militarily and in every other way? The inventions, things that they're building in China. Everything's being built in China. Where was it invented? Who developed it? Who had the technology? Where did it come from? Who makes the improvements? It's either going to be the Jews or it's going to be the United States. That's where it comes from. And they have the power. God has protected them. Even though I can understand if God turned his back on us as a country, I can understand why he might, but why he could or would, because of the things that we've done, how far we've fallen short of what we could have been, what God intended for us to be. But he said, Ephraim will be like a mighty man. He will be the strong man, Ephraim. Their heart will be glad as if from wine. They will be a joyful people. Indeed, their children will see it and be glad. Their heart will rejoice in the Lord. And so, where did Christianity, who spread Christianity into all the world? Now, to start with, it was the children of Israel, or of Ephraim, in a sense, if that is true, through Britain and through Spain and through even Italy. They, like Christopher, the Christ carrier, the Christ light, carrying forth into the new world, because all of the world needed the gospel. In the United States, we grew up with great revivals, and everybody was saying, we've got to get missionaries into all of the world. At the latter part of the 1800s, all the way through the last, especially toward the end of the 1900s and then the early 1900s, the great movements, the great holiness movements and missionary movements, and a lot of them joined together. Like in our denomination, the missionary movement and the holiness movement joined together and developed great ministries, so that we sent missionaries out into every country that we knew of, and there were great ministries to get the gospel translated into every language and to get the gospel out. And as it got out, the people were joyful as if they had as glad as if from wine. You remember on the day of Pentecost, they said the ones that didn't understand what was going on said they've drank sweet wine. And I think it was Peter said, it's only the 9th hour of the day. They can't be drunk already. But they were drunk in the Spirit, you might say. They were glad as if they had been drinking. Indeed, their children will see it, and they're glad. Their hearts will rejoice in the Lord. And we've learned how to rejoice in the Lord, and we've taught other nations how to rejoice in the Lord, so that they're Christians in now almost every nation. He said, I will whistle for them to gather them together. And so when God blows his whistle, it may not be that everybody will hear the whistle. And there's a couple of things that just dawned on me in reading this again this time, that it could possibly mean here that this is talking about, it's a possibility that it's looking forward to the time when he will shout, the archangel will shout, and Christ will call them up to be with himself, and will then himself, as we'll see when we get especially into the 14th chapter, that Christ himself will step down on the Mount of Olives, and the earthquake, the worldwide earthquake will occur, and all of that. It might be that that's what he's talking about here, but I think he's talking here about, I'll whistle. It may be like we've just bought these little whistles to help the dog learn not to bark when it shouldn't be barking. And hopefully I don't hear them, and I don't know if Joyce, I think she said, no, I'm not going to say whether she hears them or not, but that would not be right. But I blew it the other day when some of the little kids were here, and one of them held his ears. He could hear it really loud. But God is whistling for his children to gather them together. And I'm hoping that that's talking about a worldwide revival or something of that sort, to gather them together, because God has redeemed them. I have redeemed them, he said, and they will be as numerous as they were before. In other words, when he redeems them, those who are the redeemed are going to be as numerous as those who went out from over there. In fact, it's going to be so many that there will be no room for them to enter into the place that he's preparing there for them. When I scatter them among the people, he said, they will remember me in far countries. And that's the way it's been with the Jews, still remembering. But we also, scattered in the countries where we are, we remember the Lord. And he said, they will remember me. I will come to their mind. And we now remember the Lord. Maybe there's a time when we and our fathers forgot about God and about all of that. But now we remember. He said, they will remember me in far countries, and they with their children will live and come back. He's calling them alive. And so among the Jews, there's a great aliyah, and that means the gathering together. They're gathering themselves. They're making, I can't remember what the word actually, exact definition of it means, but it's to make the journey to Israel. A lot of people are moving to Israel, and that's going to go on a lot more those who, especially among the young people, who are being rejected in our universities and colleges and being rejected among the people, how that they are remembering God and remembering their homeland, and they're wanting to go back, and so their children, with their children, they will come back and they will live there. And I think that that's going to be going on a lot with the Christians as well. Christians are going to go through a great time of persecution and trouble. That the Bible makes that clear, that the trouble will come, and it will come upon the Christians. Those who love the Lord are going to go through a sea of distress. Verse 10, I will bring them back from the land of Egypt, gather them from Assyria, and I will bring them into the land of Gilead and Lebanon until no room can be found. Gilead, I believe, is talking about northern Jordan, that what's now, I guess, would be the nation of Jordan. So Abraham gave the land on the east bank of the Jordan River. He gave it to Ammon and Moab, and so they had those two. But the land north of there, you remember how that the half tribe of Manasseh, I think it was, and some others anyway, that's where they settled, and so they're going to have that land again, that north of Lebanon. And maybe it goes on into, I believe it probably, yes it does, go into what is now Iraq. It'll go into Lebanon, all the way across there. All of that from the Euphrates River all the way down to the Wadi of Egypt. And the Wadi of Egypt may mean the stream that's across the bottom of there that marks a boundary between Israel and Egypt, but it could also mean the Nile, but the Nile will be dried up when the day comes. But he said, I'll bring them back, and there will be no room can be found for them. There will be so many in Gilead and in Lebanon at that time. And they will pass through the Sea of Distress. The Sea of Distress, I've thought about it a while this afternoon and thinking about the Sea of Distress. We are going to go through some tough times. The Sea of Distress, if you look up the Sea of Distress, is not a place, there's not a lot of references, but there are a lot of pictures of the Sea of Distress. It's just interesting how that, and generally it's showing either ships that are going through great storms or coastlands that are being ravaged by hurricanes and things like that. But when you're going through the Sea of Distress, there's some of you are going through that sea, or will soon be going through that sea. And the Sea of Distress is one where it seems like that you're going to drown. There's going to be no possible way, but God will bring them safely through. They will pass through the Sea of Distress. It says, and he will strike the waves of the sea, so that all the depth of the Nile will dry up, and the pride of the Assyrian will be brought down. In other words, Iraq on the one side and Egypt on the other, how that they are going to be brought down and in subjection, and they will be as one of three among with the children of Israel. That entire place will be all worshiping God, worshiping Christ in the day that's coming. So the depth of the Nile will dry up, and the pride of Assyria will be brought down, and the scepter, in other words, the ability to have their own king, will depart from Egypt. And he said, and I will strengthen them in the Lord, and in his name they will walk, declares the Lord. So God will bring them to salvation. God will bring them through, and God will strengthen them in the Lord. And they are going to be, that will be the center of where Christ will set up his kingdom in the day that is to come. All right, I know that it is still a few minutes till, but at the same time, I don't want to go into the next chapter tonight. And so I'm going to stop right at that point. I'm going to stop sharing and give you an opportunity to turn on your cameras or your mics or both. And are there any questions, comments, anything that I need to know about, anything that's happened all the time that we've been on that I haven't been seeing? All right. Are we ready to pray? Pretty much ready? Oh, okay.
Sandy checked the message. I sent the number to you, but okay.
All right. Okay, we're ready to pray? Let's pray. Father, we're grateful for the many blessings you brought upon us. We're thankful, dear Lord, that your plan is perfect. And whether we understand it in full or not at this time is not the most important thing, but that we know, dear Lord, that you have a plan and that you can bring these things to mind when the time comes. Thank you for these, dear Lord, that have come to join us tonight, and for those that will be listening to the YouTube videos tomorrow or whatever day it might be. Would you have your perfect will and way, and bring us close to yourself again, we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Lord bless you, and I'll say good night.